Okay, in this lecture we're going to walk through the basics of bond valuation. And first of all, we need to understand whenever you're talking about bond valuation, there are two things sort of simultaneously going on. One, there are market conditions that surround the bond issuance, and then there are the contractual obligations that the firm or the bond issue agrees to. And so these two things are two situations or dynamics that don't always exactly match up. And the reason why is because the contractual payments are usually determined before the final issuance takes place. And that means that any pre-negotiated rate could be too high or too low. Usually it's not going to change a lot, but it's still possible that that pre-negotiated rate could change. And so what are the implications of that? Well, if market conditions change for the worse, that means that the market rate of interest or the fair rate of interest, the bond yield is going to go up. And in that case, given that the contractual obligation is fixed, the bond is going to be issued at a discount. At the same time, if market conditions improve, that means that the market demand for interest is going to go down again, yet the contractual obligation is already established, and therefore in that situation, the bond is going to get issued at a premium. It's very rare that a company would intentionally issue a bond at a discount or a premium. Rather, usually it's some change in the market dynamic between the negotiated rate and the actual issuance. Usually that change in the market is what will create a discount or a premium. Okay, so let's kind of walk through the basic mechanics, and we can kind of see a table here that correlates to a time value of money calculator. And so for all of my classes, I always use a time value of money calculator, financial calculator. And so I just want to kind of highlight which each of these buttons coincides to. And so for the N is the number of interest payment periods. And so if it's semi-annual, it'd be the number of semi-annual periods. If it's an annual payment, it'd be the number of annual payments or annual periods. And so again, N is just the number of interest payment periods, sometimes known as maturity. The I/Y is the bond yield or the market rate or the discount rate, and that's just basically what the market requires as a rate of return on their on their loan to the bond issuer. The PV is the bond price, the proceeds, or the cash received at issuance. The I/Y and the PV kind of interplay off of each other. As the bond yield goes up, the bond price is going to go down. As the bond yield goes down, the bond price is going to go up, and vice versa. The payment is the contractual interest payment amount. That's the contractual agreement on how much interest is going to be paid on a periodic basis. And then finally, the FV is the par value, the face value, or the cash that's contractually paid at maturity. That's that lump sum par value payment at the very end. Okay, so let's kind of walk through to see how these things kind of work themselves out in an example. And so a company issues $500,000 in 6% annual 10-year bonds on January 1st, 2020, and we're going to walk through three different scenarios. What is the bond price if the yield is 5%? What is the bond yield if the price is 100? And what is the bond yield if the bond price is 98? We're just going to kind of walk through each of these in turn. So starting with the 5%. First of all, the contractual obligation determines the N, the payment, and the FV. And so in this case, the N is 10 annual periods, so the N is 10. The payment is 6% of par value. 6% times 500,000 is 30,000. And so from the bond issuer's perspective, they are making a payment of $30,000 every year. And then finally, there is a lump sum payment at the end, that par value of $500,000 when the bond matures. Again, it's negative, just like the payment, because from the bond issuer's perspective, that's a payment that they are making. And so in this case, the bond yield is 5%. And so we can fill in the I/Y. And so now we have all four elements that allow us to calculate the bond price. In this case, the bond price is $538,609, which means that the bond has been issued at a premium. And the reason the bond is being issued at a premium is because the bond rate, 6%, is greater than the bond yield of 5%. So the next one is, what is the bond yield if the bond price is 100? This is more for illustrative purposes, but I kind of want to walk you through it. In this scenario, the N, the payment, and the FV are exactly the same, and the reason why is because those are the contractual obligations, and those don't change depending on the bond yield or the bond price. And in this case, we're given the bond price. And so when you get a quote of 100, that means that the bond is issued at 100% of par value, which means that the par value and the issue price are exactly the same. And as you might expect, when you solve for the I/Y, because the bond is issued at par, the bond yield, 6%, is equal to the bond rate also of 6%. And then finally, we have a situation is what is the bond yield if the bond price is 98? Again, 98 is quoted as a percent of par. So basically it means what if the bond is issued at 98% of the par value? Just like the previous two situations, the N, the payment, and the FV are exactly the same. And now in this case, the price is 98% of par, which is $490,000. So the company will receive $490,000 at issuance. And so when we solve for the I/Y, which is the bond yield, we get a discount bond because the yield on the bond is more than the bond rate. And so the bond yield is 6.2753%, whereas the bond rate is 6%. And so since the bond rate is less than the bond yield, the bond is being issued at a discount. Okay, to summarize the types of bonds that were just illustrated, first of all, par bond is a situation where the bond rate equals the bond yield and where the par value is equal to the price. A discount bond is a situation where the bond rate is less than the bond yield, which means that the par value is going to be greater than the price. And then finally, a premium bond is a situation where the bond rate is greater than the bond yield, which means that the par value is going to be less than the price.